So many people want to write a book, but they just don't know where to start. Well, in today's video, I'm going through 5 tips to start writing your novel. Let's go. Welcome to the channel. My name is Robert Enright, creator of the Indie Author Playbook, designed to help kickstart your indie author career by simplifying self-publishing and putting a little bit of positivity back in the process. So many people want to write a book. It's one of the biggest things I've been told ever since I started writing books many years ago from a lot of people was, oh, I'd love to write a book, or I've got such a great idea for a book, I just don't know where to start. So in today's video, I'm going to give you 5 tips on how to start writing your book. So that's taking it from your brain to when you start clicking away and writing on it. So let's get into it, shall we? Step number 1, put your idea down on paper. This sounds like such a simple step, and when I say this to people, they go, "Muh," like, obviously. The idea of doing this is if you've got all these ideas in your head, you've got this brilliant idea for a book, it's sitting in your head, it's not manifesting anywhere, it's not growing anywhere as an actual entity. So take your idea and write it out. Write the premise out in 2 or 3 sentences. So let's take my book one by one as an example. The premise for this, the idea behind this book was, what if a gang killed a guy's wife, but the guy was actually more violent than they were? That was the idea. As soon as I'd written that down, I could start building on it and molding it and turning it into something. But the fact that I wrote out the idea, I got it down on paper, meant I could start letting it breathe. So step number 2 is to do an S-plan. Now, I learned to do an S-plan when I was in primary school many years ago, and I still don't have a more useful technique for planning out a rough draft of a storyline. All you need for this is a pen and a sheet of paper, and then all you're going to do is you're going to draw a big S in the middle of the paper, and at the top of your S, that's where the story starts, and at the end of your S is obviously where your story ends. And then from there, you just line off and plot points of the story as it follows the curve of the S. It's a very, very, very effective way to just map out a basic storyline. And the more you get into it and the more you flesh it out, you'll end up looking with an S-plan that pretty much fills the page. Step number 3 is start creating some character sheets. So obviously you've got your premise for your story, you've got a basic outline of the story itself. Now it's time to start really fleshing out those characters. It's time to bring them to life. So essentially what you're going to want to do is you probably want to get your main character, you want to put down their name, their age, their height, their hair color, their relationships, anything that is pertinent to the story as well. I have character sheets for all of my characters, especially ones in series, so I can link through their timeline, their history. Down in the description below, I've actually got an Excel document that you can download, which is a basic character template for you to use. Really good to use. Just note down anything that you think is important. If you're writing a romance book, and it's an office romance, put down where they work, how long they've been working there. If you're doing a fantasy book and you've got different creatures like orcs or goblins, or there's a war between dragons and elves and there's all this lore, and if you combine that with your S-plan, you can really start building your story. Step number 4 is to do just that, flesh it out. So what I tend to do is I know my books, I write 30 chapters. So once I take my S-plan, I then map out, I bullet point 3 to 4 bullet points per chapter, and it helps me build the story. Oh yeah, don't worry, it never stays that way. As you write a book, the story will take on a life of its own, okay? So don't feel that you have to stick rigidly to these plans. If you are struggling to write your book, I would strongly suggest following the steps. You've got your S-plan, you've got some characters, start plotting out those chapters. Drop in where certain characters meet for the first time. If you've got a plot twist coming up, plot in earlier in the book where there was a little hint towards it. The more you plan, the more the book will come together. Step 5. Right, last step here, do some research. Seriously, if you're writing a book and it's based in London, do some research on the key areas that you're going to go to. If you've got a book based in New York City, do some research. That doesn't mean get on a plane and go there. You know, we're not stinking rich. There's so much information everywhere on the internet nowadays. So if you need to know what's on a certain street in a state of America you've never been to, you can find that out. If your character uses a certain gun and you want to know what caliber rounds it uses, you can find that out. Doing research on your book, especially if you've plotted in through the steps we've done, you've plotted in some key areas or key elements of the book that require research, I implore you to do that research, because you'll upset someone. Someone will write a review saying, this person doesn't know anything. It happens, trust me. So last thing to do is to start writing. If you're struggling, if you don't have a writing tool, don't worry. I write all of my books on Microsoft Word, but you can use writing tools like Scrivener or Jotter or Wattpad. Or if you don't want to pay for anything, you could use a free app like Google Sheets, which is free with your Gmail account. Or you could download Libra, which is a kind of a dummy Microsoft. Let me know in the comments below, what is stopping you from writing your book? And also let me know, are you going to use these tips I've just given you? Hopefully you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please feel free to hit that thumbs up button. Share this with any other authors or people who are starting to write. If you're interested in learning more about self-publishing, please consider subscribing to the channel. Right, off you go. I've given you the blueprint. Start writing that book, and I will catch you next time.